The fever struck without warning. One moment, Red Fawn was tracking deer prints through the Guadalupe foothills. The next, he was burning alive from the inside out, his 10-year-old body convulsing in the buffalo hide tepee, while his mother screamed for the shamans. 3 medicine men came. 3 medicine men failed. The wound on his leg, a simple fall, nothing more, had turned black and rotted, and now Chief Iron Wolf's only son lay dying in 1872 Texas, and nobody could save him. But here's the thing about desperate times. They make people do desperate things. And what happened next? Nobody saw it coming. The raiding party returned at dusk, dragging a captive through the dust. Elizabeth Carter, widow, healer, white woman. Her dress was torn, her hair matted with blood, but her eyes, they burned with something the Comanche warriors didn't expect. Defiance. They threw her medical case at Iron Wolf's feet, and the chief looked at his dying son, then at this strange woman, and made a choice that would change everything. "Save him," Iron Wolf growled in broken English. "Or die with him." Elizabeth nodded once. Just once. And walked into that tepee like she was walking into her own grave. The air inside hit her like a wall, thick with heat, sour with sickness, heavy with death. Red Fawn's skin was slick, his breathing ragged, his pulse threading away like smoke. Elizabeth knelt beside him, her hands moving fast, checking, probing, assessing. Influenza complicated by infection. The wound was festering, rotting, killing him from the inside out. She opened her case. Vials glinted in the firelight. A small blade. Alcohol that would burn clean. Iron Wolf watched from the shadows, his hand never leaving his knife. And Elizabeth knew. One wrong move, one mistake, and they'd both be dead before sunrise. She poured alcohol on the wound. Red Fawn whimpered. Yellow Moon, his mother, clutched her son's hand, tears streaming down her weathered face. Elizabeth worked through the night, extracting a splinter of rotted wood from deep in the gash, stitching it closed with thread from her kit, mixing a poultice of sage and herbs her late husband had taught her about. But then midnight came, and everything changed. Strange red marks bloomed across Red Fawn's skin. Not infection. Something else. Something worse. Elizabeth's heart dropped as she reached for her case, fumbling for the vial of quinine, her best hope, her only hope, and found it shattered. The glass was jagged, deliberate. Someone had broken it on purpose. Someone in this camp wanted the boy dead. Elizabeth's eyes snapped to the tepee entrance where a silhouette lingered. Stoneclaw, the warrior who'd captured her. His gaze was colder than the desert night, and in that moment Elizabeth realized she wasn't just fighting disease. She was fighting murder. But Red Fawn couldn't know. Iron Wolf couldn't know. Not yet. By dawn the fever broke. Red Fawn's breathing steadied. His small chest rose and fell with life, and Yellow Moon wept with relief while Iron Wolf stood rigid, his stone face cracking just enough to show something human underneath. The camp stirred with whispers. The white woman had done what their shamans couldn't. But Elizabeth felt no victory, only dread, because that shattered vial sat in her case like a loaded gun, and Stoneclaw was still out there, watching, waiting for his next chance to strike. The whispers spread like wildfire. By midday, a young mother approached with her toddler limp with fever, eyes pleading where words failed. Elizabeth hesitated. She was still a captive, still bound by invisible chains. But Iron Wolf nodded from across the fire pit, and that nod was permission. She knelt by the child, checking for signs, giving instructions. Boil water. Keep it clean. The camp watched, torn between awe and suspicion. Then Stoneclaw's voice cut through the murmurs like a blade. "This white witch taints our blood." His hand gripped his tomahawk, his eyes burning with zealot fire. The crowd parted. Warriors tensed. Yellow Moon gasped. And Red Fawn, weak, barely conscious Red Fawn, lifted his head and spoke. "She saved me when the spirits turned away." The words hung in the air like smoke. A 10-year-old boy defending a white woman against his own people. Stoneclaw's jaw tightened, but he backed off, his glare promising trouble. Elizabeth's hands trembled as she worked, treating a hunter's gashed arm, a grandmother's aching joints. Each patient was a step toward acceptance, each moment shadowed by the knowledge that someone wanted her dead. That night, she found a bloodied cloth in her case. The pattern matched Stoneclaw's cloak. Elizabeth hid it in her satchel, her heart pounding. Confronting him would spark a war within the tribe. Staying silent might cost Red Fawn's life. She was trapped, and the walls were closing in fast. Red Fawn recovered slowly, his curiosity growing sharper each day. "How do you know which herb stops pain?" he asked, his small hands mimicking her motions. Elizabeth paused, struck by his hunger for knowledge. "My husband taught me," she said, her voice catching. Her husband, killed in a raid Iron Wolf had led. The irony burned like acid. But Red Fawn's eyes lit up, and he began naming herbs in Comanche, building a bridge across their worlds with nothing but words and wonder. Elizabeth taught Yellow Moon to mix antiseptic salves, their hands working side by side, blending two medicines into one. And for a moment, just a moment, she forgot she was a prisoner. Then she checked her satchel one night and found a new tear. Her tools rearranged. Someone had been searching. The bloodied cloth was still there, but now it felt like a ticking bomb. Stoneclaw's hostility simmered, his whispers spreading doubt among the warriors. Elizabeth knew his next move was coming. She just didn't know when. The answer came with hoofbeats in the distance. A scout's urgent shout shattered the night. "Soldiers! Led by Tonkawa scouts!" The camp exploded into chaos. Warriors grabbed weapons. Women gathered children. Iron Wolf stood tall, his voice steady, but his eyes betraying the weight of command. "The Tonkawa guide bluecoats to our trail. We cannot fight their numbers. Not with winter coming." The council murmured. Some wanted to stand and fight, others to retreat into the hills. Elizabeth stood at the edge, tolerated but not welcomed. Stoneclaw's glare bored into her, his hand twitching toward his knife. Then Iron Wolf turned to her with words that changed everything. "You ride with me, healing woman. Your white tongue may keep their guns silent." Elizabeth swallowed. Refusal wasn't an option. But the bloodied cloth in her satchel whispered of danger closer than any soldier. They set out at noon, 4 riders cutting through the parched plain. Iron Wolf, 2 warriors, and Elizabeth. The wind whipped dust into their eyes as they spotted the cavalry by a dry creek bed. 30 men in blue, rifles glinting. 6 Tonkawa scouts with painted faces and old grudges. And at the front, Captain Harrison. The man whose broken promise had left Elizabeth's wagon train defenseless. The man indirectly responsible for her husband's death. Elizabeth's hands tightened on the reins, but she kept her face blank. The captain rode forward, his mustache twitching with suspicion. "Identify yourselves," Elizabeth urged her horse forward, her voice steady despite the pounding in her chest. "I'm Dr. Elizabeth Carter, physician and intermediary. These men seek parley under truce." Harrison's gaze flicked over her torn dress, patched with Comanche leather, and his lip curled. "A white woman riding with savages. Speak plain or we'll take you by force." Iron Wolf tensed. Elizabeth raised a hand. "Force will cost lives on both sides. Hear us out." In the captain's tent, distrust hung thick as fog. Harrison sat behind a folding table, his map strewn with red lines marking Comanche territory. Elizabeth translated Iron Wolf's measured words. "We seek passage to our winter grounds. No blood needs to spill if you honor our right to hunt." Harrison scoffed. "The government demands all Comanche report to Fort Sill. No exceptions." Elizabeth's jaw tightened. She knew Fort Sill. Cramped, diseased, a graveyard dressed as a reservation. "Captain," she cut in, no longer just translating, "I've seen their camp. They're no threat. Deny them their grounds and you'll breed desperation, not peace." Harrison's eyes narrowed. "You sound like one of them, Dr. Carter. Your wagon train's fate was unfortunate, but don't let it cloud your judgment. The jab stung. Elizabeth held his gaze. My judgment is clear. Fort Sill's conditions, filth, starvation, will kill them faster than bullets. Let them winter in their lands. I'll stay as guarantee. Physician and hostage, to ensure no trouble. The tent fell silent. Harrison leaned back, weighing her words. You'd stake your life on these people? I stake it on reason, Elizabeth said. War benefits no one here. The negotiations dragged. Harrison's skepticism clashed with Iron Wolf's pride. Elizabeth's satchel grew heavier with each passing minute, the bloodied cloth a silent warning. She caught a Tonkawa scout staring at her bag, and a chill ran through her. Did he know something about Stoneclaw's schemes? As the talk stalled, she produced a letter, a faded army dispatch promising safe passage to settlers. Never honored. You failed us once, she told Harrison, her voice low but cutting. Don't fail these people too. The captain's face twitched. After a long pause, he agreed to send a rider to Fort Richardson for orders, granting a temporary truce. As they rode back to camp, Iron Wolf broke the silence. You spoke for us, when you could have walked free. His tone held no warmth, only curiosity. Elizabeth glanced at the horizon. Freedom's no good if it means bloodshed. But her mind was on the cloth, on Stoneclaw's lurking threat. The camp came into view, fires flickering like stars against the dusk. The truce was fragile, and the traitor within the tribe was a fuse waiting to ignite. Yellow Moon met her gaze, sensing the storm brewing. Elizabeth stood on the edge between two worlds, caught between salvation and betrayal. That night, snow began to fall. Winter's first kiss on the Guadalupe foothills. Elizabeth checked Red Fawn's wound in the dim tepee, his recovery steady but slow. His eyes followed her hands as she taught him to grind willow bark into fever-reducing paste. You press it like this, she said, guiding his small fingers. Yellow Moon watched, her weathered hands weaving sinew. He learns fast, like his father once did. Elizabeth smiled, but her mind was on the satchel hidden beneath her pallet. Its contents, a ticking fuse. Captain Harrison's rider returned with grudging approval. The Comanche could winter in their grounds, but Elizabeth must report weekly to Fort Richardson. Her role as intermediary was now official. A crate of medical supplies arrived, bandages, laudanum, antiseptic, a lifeline for the tribe's sick. Elizabeth distributed them carefully, treating a cough-racked elder and a child with frostbitten toes. But Stoneclaw lingered at the camp's edge, his whispers poisoning the warrior's trust. She brings white death, he hissed. Elizabeth caught the words, her pulse quickening. The bloodied cloth was her only proof, but revealing it could spark civil war. By midday, Yellow Moon drew her aside, her eyes sharp as flint. You hide something, healing woman. It eats at you. Elizabeth hesitated, then pulled the cloth from her satchel, its bloodstain stark against the firelight. This was in my case with the broken vial. It matches Stoneclaw's cloak. Yellow Moon's face hardened, but she shook her head. Accuse him and the tribe splits. We cannot afford division with soldiers so close. Elizabeth nodded, her stomach twisting. Silence was safety, but it left the traitor free to strike again. Red Fawn's lessons became her refuge. She taught him to read a pulse, to spot infection's telltale heat, blending her husband's medical notes with Comanche herbcraft. This root, she said, holding up a gnarled specimen Yellow Moon had shown her, eases swelling when boiled right. Red Fawn mimicked her, his small hands deft, his questions piercing. Can a healer fight like a warrior? Elizabeth paused, her husband's death flashing through her mind. A raid tied to Iron Wolf's band. A healer fights what warriors can't see, she said. Disease, despair, those are enemies too. The boy's eyes lit up, his path shifting from warrior to something greater. That night, Iron Wolf summoned her to his fire, an honor rare for a captive. The camp's fires cast long shadows as he spoke. Spring comes soon. The soldiers will demand our answer. Reservation or war? His eyes, dark and unyielding, studied her. What is your place, healing woman? Elizabeth's breath caught. I stay with Red Fawn. He's my apprentice, and this camp needs a healer. She paused, then pushed forward. But there's another way. A settlement where your people keep your ways, with medicine and food enough to thrive. I can fight for that. Not with blades, but with words. Iron Wolf's silence stretched, the fire crackling between them. Yellow Moon nodded. Red Fawn spoke up, his voice small but fierce. I could learn more, Father. Help our people live. Iron Wolf's gaze softened, a rare crack in his stoic mask. You speak of dreams, healing woman. Dreams break easily. So do chains, Elizabeth said, unflinching. I've seen your strength. Let me help you forge something new. A shout pierced the night. A scout, breathless, his horse lathered. Tonkawa tracks near the river. They scout for new soldiers, not Harrison's. Iron Wolf's face darkened. The truce was fraying. Elizabeth's hand brushed her satchel. Stoneclaw stood nearby, his eyes glinting in the firelight. Unreadable. The truth had to come out. But not yet. Not until she could protect Red Fawn and the fragile hope she'd kindled. Days blurred into a rhythm of healing and caution. Elizabeth treated patients, taught Red Fawn, reported weekly to Fort Richardson where Captain Harrison watched her with suspicious eyes. Each visit was a tightrope walk. Too much praise for the Comanche and she risked her credibility. Too little and she betrayed the people who'd become her purpose. Then, one frozen morning, everything exploded. A warrior collapsed at the camp's edge, an arrow in his back. Not cavalry. Not Tonkawa. The fletching was Comanche. Elizabeth rushed to him, her hands working fast to staunch the bleeding, but his dying words sent shockwaves through the tribe. Stoneclaw sold us to the Tonkawa. The warrior died in her arms, and chaos erupted. Warriors shouted, demanding Stoneclaw's head. Yellow Moon clutched Red Fawn close. Iron Wolf stood rigid, his face carved from stone. And Stoneclaw? He drew his tomahawk, backing toward the horses, his eyes wild with cornered rage. Lies, he roared. The White Witch poisons your minds. Elizabeth pulled the bloodied cloth from her satchel, holding it high. This was in my case the night the quinine was broken. Your cloak, Stoneclaw. You tried to kill Red Fawn. You've been working with the Tonkawa all along. Stoneclaw's face twisted. For a moment, silence hung like a blade. Then he lunged, not at Elizabeth, but at Red Fawn. The boy screamed. Yellow Moon threw herself in front of her son, and Iron Wolf moved faster than seemed possible for a man his size, his tomahawk singing through the air. Stoneclaw fell, blood pooling in the snow. The camp exhaled as one. Warriors surrounded the traitor's body, checking for signs of life. There were none. Iron Wolf turned to Elizabeth, his eyes holding something she'd never seen there before. Respect. Trust. Maybe even gratitude. You saved my son twice, he said quietly. Once from death. Once from betrayal. But there was no time to celebrate. More scouts arrived with devastating news. A full regiment was marching from Fort Sill, not Harrison's diplomatic unit, but battle-hardened soldiers with orders to force the Comanche onto the reservation by any means necessary. They'd be here within 2 days. Elizabeth's mind raced. The truce was worthless now. Harrison had been overruled. Unless she could stop this, everyone she'd come to care about would die or be imprisoned on that disease-ridden reservation. She made a decision that shocked everyone. I'm riding to Fort Richardson, she announced. Tonight. Alone. Iron Wolf shook his head. You'll be captured. I'll be heard, Elizabeth countered. I have influence now. Harrison's reports mention me. I can reach the commanding officer, make them understand what Fort Sill really means for your people. They'll never listen, Yellow Moon said softly. Then I'll make them listen, Elizabeth replied. Red Fawn. You remember everything I taught you? The boy nodded, his eyes wide but determined. Good. If I don't come back, you're their healer now. She rode through the night, pushing her horse hard through snow and darkness. Fort Richardson loomed ahead, its walls stark against the moonlit sky. Guards stopped her at the gate, rifles raised, but when she gave her name, they let her through. Captain Harrison met her in the command building, his face grim. "Dr. Carter, you shouldn't be here." "No," Elizabeth said, "I should, and so should Colonel Mackenzie." She named the commanding officer, the man whose orders would decide everything. "I need to speak with him, now." Harrison hesitated, then nodded. "He's been wanting to meet you." Colonel Mackenzie was a hard man with harder eyes, but he listened as Elizabeth spoke. She told him about Red Fawn, about the healing, about the community she'd found among people she was supposed to hate. She told him about Fort Sill's conditions, the disease, the starvation, the death. She told him about Stoneclaw's betrayal, about the Tonkawa scouts playing both sides, about the fragile peace that could still be salvaged. "You ask me to disobey direct orders," Mackenzie said finally. "I ask you to see sense," Elizabeth replied. "You'll kill them with kindness dressed as captivity. Let them winter in their grounds. I'll stay as permanent liaison, physician, teacher, bridge between worlds. Give them a chance to adapt instead of forcing them to die." Mackenzie stood, walked to the window, stared out at the snow-covered plains. Minutes stretched like hours. Then he turned. "6 months," he said. "You have 6 months to prove this can work. But if there's one incident, one raid, one broken promise, they go to Fort Sill and you go to prison for aiding fugitives." Elizabeth's knees nearly buckled with relief. 6 months is enough. She rode back to camp at dawn, exhausted but triumphant. The Comanche spotted her from a distance, warriors riding out to meet her, and when she told them the news, something amazing happened. Iron Wolf, stern, stoic Iron Wolf, smiled. Not a big smile, but it was there. "You fight with words like I fight with weapons," he said. "You are truly healing woman." The winter passed in a blur of work and wonder. Elizabeth taught Red Fawn everything she knew, and he taught her the Comanche ways in return. Together, they created something new, a medicine that blended two worlds, that honored both traditions. Other tribes heard about the arrangement and sent emissaries. Maybe, just maybe, there was another way forward. Yellow Moon became her sister in all but blood. Iron Wolf, her unlikely ally. And Red Fawn? He became the healer she'd always dreamed of training. Curious, compassionate, fearless in the face of suffering. Spring came with wildflowers and hope. Elizabeth rode to Fort Richardson for her final report, Captain Harrison at her side. Colonel Mackenzie read her detailed accounts, interviewed her extensively, and finally nodded. "The arrangement stands," he announced. "Permanent medical station at the Comanche Winter Grounds. Dr. Carter as chief physician and cultural liaison. Red Fawn as her apprentice and translator." He looked at Elizabeth with something like awe. "You've done something I didn't think possible, Doctor. You've built a bridge." "No," Elizabeth said, glancing back toward the distant camp where smoke rose from cooking fires and children played and Red Fawn was probably mixing medicines. "We all built it, together." She returned to the camp for the last time as a captive, and the first time as something else entirely. The tribe gathered as Iron Wolf spoke in Comanche, his words translated by Red Fawn. "Healing woman came to us as enemy. She leaves as family. Her place is here if she chooses. No longer prisoner, no longer stranger. One of us." The tribe erupted in celebration. Yellow Moon embraced her, tears streaming. Red Fawn hugged her waist, laughing. And Elizabeth felt something she hadn't felt since her husband died. Home. The years that followed weren't easy. There were setbacks, conflicts, moments when the old hatreds threatened to consume everything they'd built. But Elizabeth and Red Fawn stood firm, healing bodies and bridging cultures, proving that sometimes the bravest warriors are the ones who refuse to fight. Red Fawn grew into a legendary healer, known among Comanche and whites alike. He trained others, spreading the blended medicine they'd created, and when he was old enough, he traveled to medical school in the East, returning with knowledge that he wove seamlessly into his people's traditions. Elizabeth lived among the Comanche for the rest of her life. She never remarried, never left. She'd found her purpose in the most unlikely place, among the most unlikely people. And on the day she died, surrounded by 3 generations of healers she'd trained, Yellow Moon held her hand and whispered, "You saved more than my son that first night. You saved all of us." Elizabeth smiled. "No," she said, her voice fading like smoke. "You saved me." If you were moved by Elizabeth's journey from captive to healer, from enemy to family, don't forget to subscribe. Share this story with someone who needs to hear about courage that bridges divides. Drop a comment below telling us where you're watching from and what part of the story hit you hardest. Because these stories matter, these bridges matter. And together we can keep building them. One word, one healing, one brave choice at a time.